Well, good afternoon, everyone. First thing, I want to welcome Ms. Rosalind Akins and Dr. Gerald L. Smith to the Government Center. They have served as co-chairs of our Mayor's Commission for Racial Justice and Equality. Also here with us today is Councilmember Mark Swanson. Mark is one of 5 council members who served on one of the Commission's subcommittees. We are also joined by Commissioner Chris Ford, our Social Services Commissioner. Chris led an internal team of employees who provided all of the administrative support for the Commission. Also this morning, I want to recognize our State Senator, Reggie Thomas, who's here to be supportive. Thank you so much. Well, it has taken a lot of work to get to this day. And so I first give my tremendous thanks to Ms. Akins, to Dr. Smith, and to the 70 members of this commission. Over the past few months, this group has had hours and hours of meetings. They've brought in dozens of speakers and studied tons of data. They worked all summer during a global pandemic. The Commission had 5 subcommittees, and each subcommittee wrote a report. From these subcommittee reports, Ms. Akins and Dr. Smith put together the 68-page final report we are making public today. This report pulls off our city's rose-colored glasses and takes a hard look at the racism that holds us back. Given all the challenges our community is currently facing, a pandemic, an economic downturn, we could have said there are more than enough challenges on our plate. However, as mayor, I recognize there are critical moments I cannot let pass. This is that moment. This report makes 54 recommendations that touch all corners of our community, including schools, police, healthcare, courts, jobs, housing, accountability, partnerships, and more. Some recommendations require funding. Others involve a change in state law. Some are administrative, and some require council action. We know we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I have confidence in our citizens. We can make the changes we need to make to become a place where everyone feels welcome and safe, where everyone has the opportunity to get a good education and a good job. When I appointed this commission on July the 1st, I put it on a tight timetable. I thought there were things we could act on quickly, and the commission has identified several short-term goals. The Commission also made more complicated recommendations that will require more work. It is clear we need a permanent voice in our city to help us keep moving forward. So my first step today is to announce I will work with the council to appoint a new permanent Commission for Racial Justice and Equality. Now, let's hear from Commission Co-Chair Rosalind Akins, Director of the BMW Academy and Civic Leader. Roz?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, so very much. First of all, let me thank the Mayor for this opportunity to make a difference in our community. What a joy it has been to work with Dr. Gerald Smith as we finalize this report. I also want to commend all of the committee committee chairs. They have done an awesome job in helping to bring this report together. They're the ones who spent the time and the effort bringing in expertise in different areas and in bringing in speakers so that they could make an intelligent recommendation that can make a difference in our city. So we applaud all of our committee sub-chairs, and then we thank the 70 people who were a part of the commission, who gave of their time because of their love for this city. And so today you get the report, and as the mayor said, we have several recommendations in this report that we know that this is an opportunity for us to have a better Lexington. And as I said to the council today and to the mayor when we had an earlier meeting, my ultimate desire to be on this committee, and after I prayed about being the co-chair, the one thing that motivated me to do this was the fact of all the young men that are part of the BMW Academy. We have over 300 young African-American males in this program, and when I look into their eyes, I want to see a better Lexington. I don't want them, when they graduate from college, to leave Lexington and go to Charlotte or to Atlanta or some other place where they think they can get a good job or where they can raise their family. I want them to come right back here to Lexington and make, who knows, take Mayor Gorton's place and be on the council. I need them to come back here and be entrepreneurs and to make a difference. And so that was my motivation for being a part of this, so that the future of this city can be all that it really has the opportunity to be. And so thank you again for allowing me to serve my committee. And as I would say to my young men, this is our time to educate, motivate, and to activate all that we can do for the city of Lexington. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. Very well said. Thank you. Next, let's hear from our co-chair, Dr. Gerald L. Smith, a University of Kentucky history professor and pastor of Pilgrim Baptist Church. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to begin by conveying my immense and blessed opportunity to serve. I'm very grateful and humbled by this privilege of working with Ms. Akins. We've known each other for years, but we've never, of course, worked in this capacity. And not only is she extremely smart woman, but very insightful and motivating, and has a wonderful sense of humor. So again, I thank you, Sister Akins, for the opportunity to share with you as we work through this initiative. I do want to say as well how appreciative I am for all of the hard work of the committee members, to the staff of the mayor's office and others who are associated with this initiative. It has been a daunting task, to say the least. As the mayor mentioned, there are 54 recommendations. I would add that in the conclusion, we did include 3 more recommendations for the mayor and the council to consider. As we work through all of these various issues, we focused on policies and procedures and looked at the challenges and conflicts and the opportunities and the obstacles that we may encounter as we seek to move this community forward. We have learned a lot. And we hope and pray that the community will be the better for it. We now have a document that will be forever linked to the legacy of this mayor and the council. As a historian, there will be other historians who will follow me and have done what I have done in terms of contextualizing where we are at this point in time in our history. You will find in that document that there is a history that's about 6 pages long as we've looked back at Lexington from slavery all the way to the present, to sort of explain explain why it was necessary to have a commission for racial justice and equality, realizing that there are people in this community who are indifferent to what we are concerned about and what we need, and we hope that that provides some sort of context in explaining why we're here today.
Very nice, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. And as he said, this really is our moment, and we're not going to let it go. I am convinced that this is our time to make progress, to make permanent change for our community, to move forward. I sincerely thank Ms. Rosalind Akins, Dr. Gerald Smith, all of the vice chairs who chaired these subcommittees, all of our citizens, our 70 citizens who served. They spent their whole summer doing this. And this will be a roadmap for our future. So now we all need to just get on board. If we could, we'd all pile in the car, and we're going to get started on this journey together. Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Ford, and thank you, Councilmember Swanson. And now we will take questions. Any questions for any of us?
Do you know which of these recommendations may be the quickest to enact?
Well, that's a great question. Which recommendation will be the quickest on which to act? Actually, I happen to know one of the recommendations is to dedicate money for evictions, and we've actually done that recently. So I'm happy to say there's something in there we have already taken a first step on. As far as that goes, the path forward from my perspective is that Ms. Akins and Dr. Smith and I will meet with Vice Mayor Kay, who will work with us to plan a path forward. I know the council would like to have its own committee of the whole where they can see the report. They actually have it now, and they'll be reading it, and they can have questions for our co-chairs. So, and then we'll figure out what's next.
I have a question for the co-chairs. So you spoke this morning about how the original law enforcement subcommittee group was a 54-page recommendation in its own. Can you talk a little bit about that editing process and how much had to be taken out, or was it for sake of redundancy? Just about that process, since obviously this is 68 pages in itself.
And if you'll come to the microphone.
In regard to your question, what the Law Enforcement and Accountability and Justice Subcommittee did was to provide us with an abridged and unabridged version of their report. So the abridged version was about 17 pages long. The unabridged version, of course, was the difference. And one of the things that you'll see in the unabridged version was more documentation in terms of the sources that they consulted and how they reached the conclusion of what we actually needed to do to go forward. That's the main thing.
And a follow-up, was there any disagreements with any of the things that you guys saw, and any recommendations that had to be reconsidered once it was brought to the two of you?
You want to?
That was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that what the subcommittees came to a conclusion that we put that into the report. Now, you will notice in the law enforcement committee, they had a minority report where those who disagree with the majority of what they put into the final report. So you will see a minority member report who did not go along with the majority of that. But no, we did not take out anything. And listen, you will be able to get the full committee report on the website that we have. So you'll be able to see what they actually turned in. All we did was condense and make it more readable and have it so it could flow so when we turned it over to the council.
Very nice, thank you. you.
Question for the mayor. Mayor, prior to this, the term systematic racism, I know you sat on council, I know you used to be a registered nurse. Did you ever think about systematic racism in your society, and have your eyes been opened since the protest?
The question is about systematic racism, and as a registered nurse, what did I see? And actually, I'm still a registered nurse. You know, in nursing, this is all very interesting. In the healthcare professions, we are taught to approach every single patient with the same amount of respect, with the same amount of listening, with the same approach of finding what the symptoms are and working on actions going forward. And so nurses in particular are, you know, we're trained in a different way, if you will, than some other professions, in that we try to look at everyone with the same level of concern. Now, that's not to say we know that people in different races and cultures have different health care issues sometimes. But it has opened my eyes in a different way. Since we started the commission, I have had friends, African American friends, who said, "Here's my story." And they've told me how they were stopped or they experienced discrimination, and it was surprising to me because many of those things I did not know about. And so I think the real key is going to be what I think Dr. Smith said this, engaging all of our citizens, not just a handful of our citizens. This is important to our whole community. And that is a challenge we really take on, to help everyone understand this is not just about a few people. This is not just about, you know, someone who has a complaint or a situation. This is about all of us. And that is, I believe, the way we will get to a better place for our community. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Mayor, I have a follow-up to that.
yes.
There's a sector of this country that doesn't believe that systemic racism is actually an issue. So how do you plan to engage that community who has been reluctant to understand the issue in the first place?
I think that's a great question, because actually Roz and Gerald and I talked about this in the very beginning. How do we engage all of Lexington, not just a certain part of Lexington? And we've got work to do there. We're going to have to listen and talk and meet and help people understand, even though they may not see a problem in their daily life, there are issues here. And I think one of the beauties, which Roz mentioned in the beginning of our conversations, was working with neighborhood associations all over Fayette County to understand this report and understand what we're talking about and how we can be a better community.
Is there going to be outreach to specific groups of people that, again, don't believe that this is an issue? People who are engaged in this do believe it's an issue, but we're looking at a different sector.
Mm-hmm. We have lots of educating to do, don't we? And outreach. So, yes.
You mentioned that there are some things that would take a change in state law. Can you give us a couple of examples of that, particularly since Senator Thomas is here?
Take notes.
Well, I think, obviously one of the concerns, deals with how we handle law enforcement in terms, regarding, training and recruitment. I think that's one area. Obviously, I think another area for us to take a look at is in terms of education and, how we are going to address some of the concerns and issues affecting our children and our youth. And obviously, of course, there are budgetary concerns that must be addressed.
But did you specifically ask for, say, or did one of the recommendations of that law enforcement committee ask for permission for a citizen review board? Is that?
Yeah, it's, yes, that's in there. The, 7-member disciplinary review board would include 3 non-law enforcement members as a part of that review board.
Can you go over maybe some top lines on, the whole report's very important, but law enforcement has been sort of,
Yeah.
I think, the issue that a lot of people really been interested in.
Yeah, there's, now keep in mind, in this particular segment of the report, if I remember correctly, there are 25 recommendations. There are 54 total, so I'm going to do my best to try to at least capture 3 or 4 of them. And of course, that was one regarding the disciplinary review board. Another one involved having a civilian advocate, an office or officer that could sort of usher people through complaints that they might have with the police department. Another issue was body-worn cameras. And in terms of, and that's where a minority report comes in, because there was quite a bit of debate and discussion in terms of whether or not these cameras should remain on or they should be turned off. And so the minority report, addresses that concern. And, another issue, if I remember correctly, addresses the establishment of a sobering center, and how do police officers respond to mental health issues, and what do we have to do in terms of training 9/11 dispatchers. So funding, is a major concern.
A question about the civilian review board. It's been one of the hot topics for protesters. There were 7 total, 3 civilian that you recommended, correct?
Well, we did. The subcommittee recommended it.
Why not recommend a majority civilian? Why leave 4 potential spots for officers to review instead of 4 spots for civilians?
Yeah. Now, I can't answer that question in terms of how they reached that conclusion. I think a more thorough investigation of that unabridged aspect of their report, might lend itself to even further discussion. That's the recommendation. And that's in terms of this entire report. This report should not be taken as an ending but a beginning. So don't get caught up, merely on the recommendations. It's something, it's a document that the mayor and the council can place on the table. It was not our charge to really get involved in terms of you definitely must do this or that, because we know all of this is on the table. Our task was to hand the mayor a document based on the recommendations that we have been forwarded by members of these subcommittees.
Talking about feasibility, so obviously some of these things take time.
Sure.
And going off of this, I saw in that the assistant chief Maynard is in the law enforcement part. Can you talk a little bit about did they discuss feasibility, and or are these recommendations just a wish list, or is feasibility really taken into account what can actually be changed?
I would say there were experts in all these committees. You had judges, you had lawyers, there were police. So the committees were really put together well so that you could get the best out of each of those groups. And referring back to what you said was, why did you, that was the committee's recommendation, that it would be 3 to 4. So you have to look at the people that were on there who had the expertise in all of these different areas. And so that's how they came up with the decisions and the recommendations that they made. They used all of their expertise plus the research. I mean, they had some dynamic people on that committee that was very well versed. A professor at the University of Kentucky, you had judges, you had prosecutors, you had defense lawyers. They really tried to do that committee well so that it would not look one-sided. They were able to look at both sides of something and come up with a recommendation.
So it's fair to say this is not just a wish list, this is feasible action.
These are very much feasible actions. This is not a wish list.
Very good.
And if I could,
Yeah, very good.
I would add that just returning to your question, whether or not we recommend more our entire civilian review board, what we did want to do is to give each of the subcommittees a sort of latitude to work in the area of expertise We did push and prod and ask questions during our weekly meetings with the vice chairs, but in the beginning, we provided them with what we considered to be overarching goals and objectives. And as long as they were working in those parameters, then we were fine.
A budgetary question for you, Mayor. We have had budget cuts in the city because of the pandemic, and these changes are going to take money to fix. So what kind of a commitment can we expect from the mayor's office as far as putting a budget forward for where this goes, and not just enough money to fix superficial or temporary issues, but actually putting money forward to create change in the long run?
I'm going to answer that, but I want to add one thing to what Dr. Smith and Ms. Akins said with the commission. In the beginning, just to give some context, I determined I wanted to be non-influential. I guess that's a good way to put it. Yeah. And I stayed hands-off, except when the co-chairs requested a meeting to work through some things, I met with them. So what they said about the commission doing its own work was truly, I think, a work of beauty, because that is what they did, and I stayed out of it. Now, as to budget and the budget question, every year we look at a budget. A budget is a framework for spending, as you know, and a budget also looks at our priorities and what we want to fund. And so as soon as we've had an opportunity to work through the report and understand exactly what the recommendations mean, many of them will require funding, some of them will not. And so we will definitely look at what we can put in our budget to fund some of these recommendations. And so that process will begin fairly soon. We start our budget work in December internally. And so my intention is to see what we can fund. We know we have revenue issues right now. We understand that, but we also understand the importance of these recommendations.
But it's accurate to say that most of this would have to be next fiscal year. Council's budget meeting on Tuesday is discussing surplus and CARES Act reimbursement. There is kind of a couple things that are somewhat tied to this, but most of that can't come until the next fiscal year. Is that accurate?
That's probably accurate. I mean, you figure we're almost to November, and the meeting on Tuesday was set to look at the first quarter of this current fiscal year and look at how our fund balance ended at the end of last year. And so we're always, I will tell you, we're always looking for money, though. So it's not off of our radar to look for sources of money. There are grants out there. There are many ways to do this, and I think our community partners will be really important. And we have some businesses and some entities here that may want to partner with us to help fund certain recommendations. We're going to consider all of that.
I have a question for Dr. Smith.
Yes.
You talked about this work having an impact even beyond Mayor Gorton's administration. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you'll notice, in the conclusion that there is a connection with the history in terms of how past mayors have responded to issues surrounding race. We are clearly not, in the first edition of this whole process. It was quite interesting to realize that back in the 1960s, there were African-American leaders who were bringing forth many of the same things that we're doing today, even requesting a civilian review board. And each, mayoral administration did not respond. They passed it on to others. And so, we have personally and privately and publicly challenged the mayor and the council to respond affirmatively, realizing that some action is going to take longer than others, but just simply going back to what I said earlier, we've talked, and Ms. Akins has shared as well, that this is about the future. This is about the next generation. Ms. Akins and I, we're products of the Lexington Public School System. My family lived in the Chestnut Street area. I attended Henry Clay, graduated from Henry Clay. She's a graduate of Bryan Station. I attended the University of Kentucky. She attended Transylvania University. So we realize, given the fact of where we are now, just how much the decisions that are being addressed today will impact the future.
A question for the co-chairs. You mentioned this morning you weren't sure you were going to want to be a part of this. Both of you had to pray about it, think about it. Can you talk about your confidence now and where you are?
I'll be honest with you, I don't do too many things at all without praying about it first. And this was a major responsibility, to pull together the subcommittee chairs, the 70-member commission, and anything I do, I want to do it with excellence. And I want to put my whole self into it. And I had to think about what all was going on in my life at that particular time, putting my summer on hold to be able to do this. And so, but just knowing that I could help make a difference in the lives of the young men that I encountered through the BMW Academy, as I said, that's what drove me to want to do this. And so before we knew it, we were both calling the mayor. I think we didn't even know this about the same time to say, we will do it. And so anything we do, and I'm sure I can say for Dr. Smith, we want to put our whole self into it. We don't want to half step on anything, and especially something as important as this document that can be the trajectory or change the whole city of Lexington. So that's why it took us a little while to pray about it, but once we got into it, we rolled up our sleeves and we gave it 100%.
And I'll just add, and the mayor knows this, she and I had two rather lengthy conversations, and then it was a weekend. I told her I'd let her know Monday. And my return call, I shared with the mayor. I said, now look, and I had a very candid conversation with her, having grown up here and studied this city. And I said, now look, you don't have to go public. I'm fine if you change your mind. And she said, no. And I said, okay. And I spoke to my wife and children, my mother about it, and they said, no, you got to do it. And so after I had prayed about it as well, and once God confirmed it, then okay, I'm here. So we have, we believe that this mayor is going to do something.
That's right.
Thank you. And I'll add just one sort of humorous footnote. I knew Roz from other activities, and I knew her history and her wonderful reputation. I had never met this man. When I called him to ask him to co-chair this, but I knew him from what I'd read about you and what I'd heard from other people, and it was really important to me to have the right, correct co-chairs. The leadership of the commission was important. So now we're joined at the hip. Anything else? You all know that this report and all of the information will be, it probably is by now, on the website. I'm looking for somebody who knows. On the www.lexingtonky.gov. Okay. We have all the information about the commission on that site, and it's on our homepage, so it's very easy to find. So with that, I thank you all for being here, and in particular, again, I thank our leaders and those who served on the commission, and we're ready to roll. Thank you. All right. Ooh.